I want to start off by talking about how these Green New Deal policies impact people. Right now, there's about 2 billion people around the world who have little to no access to reliable energy. And it reminds me of a quote from Thomas Hobbes' book, The Leviathan, when he described life at that time as solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. To just give you an idea of what having access to reliable energy means, the World Bank reported that since 1980, energy consumption has doubled. It was half what it is today in 1980. And extreme poverty was 4 times higher then than it is today. Life expectancy, because of China's expansion of their energy grid, and obviously it's mostly coal-fired power plants, but their life expectancy is increased by 10 years. This is not just, I mean, I worked for 2 international engineering companies. You're going to hear me repeat that multiple times. I have a pretty good idea of what it takes to generate power. I worked in everything from refuse to energy to aerospace, different projects. And I'll just be honest with you, and it's not just my opinion. There was a report from the Electric Power Research Institute that basically says that the study shows that clean electricity plus direct electrification efficiency are not sufficient themselves to achieve net zero economy-wide emissions. In other words, no amount of wind turbines, solar panels, hydropower, nuclear power, battery power, electrification of fossil fuel technologies, any of that is going to get us to net zero by 2050. That's a Wall Street Journal article describing that policy, that research paper. Ms. Jackson, you and I've had this discussion before. I grew up dirt poor. My dad had an 8th grade education. He built the house that I grew up in. He only finished what he could pay for. Unlike the federal government, he didn't spend more than he had. But we heated the house with a coal heater that sat in the kitchen. And in the wintertime, we slept under about a foot of blankets that my mom and grandmother and great aunt quilted. What does it mean to people when they see their power bills going through the roof and they're having to make decisions on how much food they can afford to buy and still be able to adequately heat or cool their home?
You know, one of the things that we always advocate for, because I hear a lot of people talking about climate change policies, but I've never heard anybody talking about actually how many degrees is going to save. If climate change policies are more harmful than what we're trying to save, then we shouldn't be enacting it. One of the things we advocate for is that you do an economic impact study on the lives of the people that it's going to affect, because the climate change policies right now are more harmful for low-income and minority families than what the climate change is supposed to be doing.
But we're hurting people.
We're hurting real people. I get calls every day from people that don't have my political lean asking for help. Black people, NAACP people, Urban League people saying we need help. They can't afford to pay these bills, but nobody's listening.
What gets me is we keep hearing report after report from Europe, from the United Kingdom about the number of people dying as a result of excess winter deaths because they can't adequately heat their homes in the wintertime. We see that here as well. People can't afford to heat their homes adequately and still afford their medicine. It really impacts people with respiratory disease, cardiovascular, that sort of thing. And it's almost like my colleagues across the aisle think this is collateral damage and that it's acceptable to achieve what clearly they're not going to achieve by 2050.
Yeah.
So, Mr. McNally, I want to ask you, I want to pivot now. China's building coal-fired plants all over the world. There was a report came out last fall, that they'd built 14 coal-fired plants. They're building out infrastructure around the world, developing allies, and yet we're going to make ourselves dependent on China for our energy production. Does that make any sense to you?
Congressman Palmer, if there's one area perhaps of bipartisan agreement, I think we're all clear-eyed, or hopefully are, that China views energy and the transition and dominance of both the power and the transportation aspects of energy as a way to replace the United States as the world's preeminent power.